Welcome to the Kent Lapp Podcast.
You had mentioned some interest in or reading up on or learning about polarities between masculine and feminine. Is it masculinity and femininity, or masculine energy and feminine energy?
Masculine essence, feminine essence,
Okay.
all of the above. Yeah.
All right. So what is it about that that's interesting to you? What are you learning in that area?
And it feels like so much to learn, and like I know so little. So apologies to anybody who is an expert in this, and comment below if there's comments on if there's things that I say that are not.
This is not medical advice.
Yes. So it has a lot less to do with gender, because I believe everybody, man and woman, has both masculine and feminine essence, energy flowing through them. I believe God is both masculine and feminine. I believe that's why marriage is so powerful, and why it's such a powerful picture of God, because of that. And so it's not as much about gender, although statistically they say somewhere in the 90 to 95% of males will probably have a higher amount of masculinity.
Okay.
And then females will have the higher, but we can tap into the other, and it's probably healthy to actually tap into both of them in times. I mean, and so masculine being more that grounded, strong, erect sort of presence, and the woman more soft, open, chaotic kind of. You think of like the chaos and order polarity. So feminine bringing more of that chaotic essence, and then the masculine bringing more of that like order, and how that plays out, and how important it is to have that polarity in a relationship, especially in a marriage relationship, but also then to be aware of it in yourself as well, and to know how to tap in, and when it's out of balance, or when it's needed, or when it's, and I grew up in a culture where I saw much more, even in women, I saw much more of the masculine essence growing up. That strong German workhorse. You pull up your bootstraps and you just
in the
get
women
things
too.
done. Yes.
That's interesting.
So it's been a very fascinating, kind of uncomfortable, disorienting journey for me to kind of figure out and find what the feminine essence looks like in me. Because it's vulnerable, and it's open, and it's this openness to, well, I mean, you can see it obviously sexually. It's very obvious, so masculine is meant to penetrate, feminine is meant to be penetrated. So it's that openness and just kind of open. Yeah. And not having this certitude, knowing exactly, what I'm about and doing at all times, and just being okay with like, yeah, well, today I feel like taking a nap. And there's obviously, like I said, it's very important at times to be in my masculine and go, no, there's times to get things done. So it's not even just in how I engage in my day. It's also in just my presence in the world. And so, yeah, it's been fascinating. Patrick and I have been both actually on that journey and learning more about that, and have a lot to learn about it. It's not something I have definitely mastered at all.
Yeah. Where are you getting information on that?
Oh, wow. There's a lot of information, and you can definitely find every flavor. I mean, you can find, crazy stuff. And then you can find, there's David Dida is really great author who talks about the masculine part of it. And it's been his book, The Way of the Superior Man.
Is that the book you guys are reading, or are you just kind of following the author?
Well, the author's great to follow, but that book in particular was one that we listened to on audio together.
What's it called again?
The Way of the Superior Man.
Okay.
Super helpful for me, even to just understand the masculine and the masculine energy, and the way that the masculine views the world, and the desires of the masculine, and then there's I'm not going to remember her name. I just bought her book, but there's a woman who learned a lot from him and actually started writing books kind of on the opposite, like for the feminine. And she wrote a book called Powerful and Feminine that I'm actually reading right now and really enjoying as well. So there's, I mean, again, you can find, it's kind of a trend, I guess, right now, depending
Okay.
on where you're looking
Yep.
and learning. But so there's a lot that you can learn. I also love, there's a few Christian women that I follow on Instagram who are standing up and being the voice for the feminine, like not being afraid of your feminine sensuality. Because that's something, again, the culture that we grew up in, which I love. As I'm getting older, I actually am falling more in love with what raised me. But part of the way that I can do that is because I'm also able to look at things that don't serve me well anymore. Like I can almost love it more because I can look at it and go, this is what was amazing, and this doesn't serve me well anymore.
Right.
And one of those things, I think, was the fear around the feminine and what she was about. And we were taught that it was, her sensuality was dangerous and it was powerful. And you're right, it is dangerous and it's powerful, but it's not something to be afraid of. So as girls in that culture, you grew up kind of fearing that about yourself. It's like you were taught that it was up to you to keep men from falling in a way. And then you grow up and you go through puberty and you're like, wait, but am I the one? Like, is it me? Like my body's changing. Am I actually one of the ones that could cause that? And so it's like, you don't even learn how to lean into that part of you that could be a gift to the world, and you just have hidden it. So that's kind of the journey that we're walking on in that. It's like how to invite that or awaken that in our relationship. And also help our children like have a proper view of that and not be afraid of it in either one of them. Like for the boys, not to be afraid to be strong and know what they're about and lean into that. And for the girls, not to be afraid to be, open to love and not to be guarded and self-protected and afraid of their own femininity.
Yeah. Can I give you an example on the fear?
Sure.
From the feminine side, because you mentioned your background, which is very similar to my background, and there was a very respectable man in that same background, not a family member or related to me in any way, but that legitimately, and I'm not, I don't want to preface this too much, but this is serious. Like he was serious, and this was not a joke or whatever, but he made the observation that divorce rates are higher in churches that were not part of our organization because, or part of our upbringing, culture, tradition, that type of thing. Because in like those churches, you have women worshiping on a Sunday morning with their hair down. And in our churches, the way we do it, like the women had their hair up, they had a bonnet on their head and everything, and furthermore, they're wearing a dress. But just that idea of like their hair is up and it's covered with a bonnet or head veiling of some kind, that is why that can contribute to families staying together, marriages staying together better, because you don't have this, I guess, attraction from women worshiping on a Sunday morning in church with their hair down. Has he changed his, we were talking about, everyone having the right to changing his opinion.
Yes.
If I talk to him, if I called him right now, I still know him. I still respect him in a lot of things. He's just very wrong on that point. And it's sort of sad because it speaks to the danger that you're talking about. Young women, put your hair up, put a head veiling on it. And I understand they would get a biblical,
that was their interpretation of a certain
explanation from the Bible.
Yeah.
So they're not doing it necessarily for those reasons, but you're right. There's a lot of people, our culture even aside, there's a lot of people that are, and lots of religions actually, when you think about it, that are very fearful of feminine energy. And I guess the power that contribution to the world, you want to sort of cloak that, keep that at bay because it can be dangerous.
Yeah. There's a book also called Pure by Linda K. Klein, and she grew up in the purity culture, fundamental evangelical Christian culture, and she takes apart, and I haven't read the whole book yet, but I'm reading through it right now and love it as well, takes apart how some of it may have, again, like when I critique something, it's not to burn the whole thing down.
Right.
It's more to take, the wheat from the chaff. Let's separate the wheat from the chaff. So I'm
Yep.
not saying that it didn't do any good, but she's just pointing out some of the inconsistencies and some of the damage it may have done. And one of it, she uses a story where, if you were a little girl growing up in a medieval town, living in a castle, and you were taught that there was a dragon out there that would destroy the men of the castle. And you wake up at about 12 or 13 one morning and you start to see scales growing on your skin, and you start to realize, again, going through puberty, that you may be the dragon, and what to do with that, and how to and how do you walk through that? And I read that for the first time, and I literally just had tears running down my face, because it was like, I understand that feeling. It's like, I don't know what to do with what's happening to me as a woman, as a little girl, because I know that what's happening is what I've been taught is what men can't help themselves with. And so I better shut this thing down, or at least hide it as much as possible. And that is the danger in some of that. Instead of going, no, this is a gift to the world, and it's exactly what you were created to do. You were created to bring beauty, to bring that gift to the world. It is very powerful. Let's talk about that. Like, let's not just ignore that and say, oh, do with it what you want. No, be aware of that is something, but that it's a gift, and it's not something that you have to be ashamed of, that should be called dangerous. So yeah, I'm, again, like, just in early stages of that, but have been having a lot of fun in learning more about that. And
yeah, that's a really interesting. I wasn't aware that it was trendy. I wasn't aware it was trending or whatever. But I'm fascinated by it, and it's a good time to have this discussion culturally and societally too, as we sort of, I feel like, it's the thing now to tear down all of these differences and to not have a difference. And if you don't want to identify as either male or female, that's fine, like we can, or just pick one if you want to change it. That's like, it's all so upheaved and confused, and it's all up for grabs right now. So it's a good time to be having that discussion.
And I wonder sometimes if, again, I don't feel like I have authority to even speak on a lot of this, but I wonder sometimes if some of the confusion is coming simply because of this denying of what we know so deep to be true. And so we're not even allowed to think about, what's true. And it just confuses us. Like, we don't, when I think of the Bible, and I've been having a lot of fun too, just kind of rereading the Bible through new eyes. I don't know if you ever talk about other podcasts on your podcast.
Why not?
Okay.
Which one are you thinking about?
One podcast that has been...
No, we have the Monopoly on podcast. Don't you mention that title.
One podcast I've been loving is the Bema podcast.
Bema.
The Bema podcast.
How do you spell Bema?
Bema. And it's Marty Solomon is the host. And he goes through the Bible from an Eastern perspective instead of a Western perspective. Absolutely blows my mind. Like, just completely new ways of looking at the Bible. Like, my favorite stories right now in the Bible are the story of Cain and Abel and the story of Noah. Like, the stories that growing up would have just been like, they would have either been made into flannel graph, and some, you would have put it in your nursery and put this little ark up or whatever, and Noah with a dove and a olive branch, or Cain and Abel, like, well, don't be like Cain, be like Abel. And, if you're like Cain, you're going to be marked for the rest of your life. Just, just a very literal, maybe reading of the word. And then, well, sometimes you extract out of it what you want to for an agenda or whatever. But to be able to look at it and go, these stories, if they're not true on multiple dimensions, then we're probably not reading it correctly. And I'm trying to remember why I was going there with the, back to the parts about femininity and masculinity. Is like, we know these things to be true about ourselves if we allow ourselves to sit with it. It's just, we haven't been given the permission to think about them in these ways. And I feel like some of these authors and these women that I'm following are maybe doing that for me, just giving me the permission to think about things in a way that I feel like I already know. wasn't ever given the permission to stay curious about it.
The one thing that's interesting to me that you touched on, which I guess I never really thought of in those concrete terms, is what does it feel like to be a young woman or to be a woman and to feel like you're starting to grow scales and you're becoming the dragon, you're becoming danger, you're becoming the enemy of good moral choices in some sense, and the responsibility lies primarily with you to not let men be dumb blokes,
Which I'm just going to call bullshit. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's total bullshit. It totally is. It's unfortunate.
Again, it translates into so much of our life. It translates into our relationships, for sure, our marriage relationship. It translates into probably your sexual experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're taught that you have to deny what's so out of your control. So you're, you're starting to grow breasts and you're starting to grow hips and these things are things you can't control, but they're dangerous. And they're probably going to cause men to fall. So you better watch it. Yikes. And you better cover that up and you better not, for sure not, like pay any attention to it.
Yeah.
Be scared of it or whatever. And then at the same time, you have to wait on somebody else, a man, preferably in our culture, to wake up that sensuality. Like, don't you dare even be in touch with your sexuality or your sensuality before somebody else wakes it up. It's just, it's so, I just don't see it serving relationships well into marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. I think certainly, I mean, there's a lot of things from that, but certainly one of the things, because I'm a guy, is it displaces the responsibility like so poorly and so incorrectly and so obviously. It's shocking that we've allowed that to happen.
Right.
You know what I mean? To make this the ladies' problem. And obviously, I guess it's different in different cultures. So some people might be listening to this and be like, I don't really know exactly what they're talking about. Like, I didn't experience that. Like, my mom taught me as a young man that, that's how women are and this is how you need to respond and everything like that. So, but then some people might be listening to this and really relate with it, but it does seem to be, while it might vary depending on the culture, it does sort of seem to be an overall issue.
It does. And I grew up in a family where my mom actually was very different than a lot of moms of my friends. And she did teach us about, I feel like, as well, better than a lot of my friends' moms, I feel like, what healthy sexual relationships look like and that it's not, and that, like, for instance, that a woman would want sex as much as a man would. Like, she was very good at teaching us what I feel like was a little ahead of her time, especially in our culture. And I still took it on from the culture. I still took that on, that like you're dangerous. What you bring to the table is probably something that needs to be, if not covered completely, needs to at least be like really shut down and oppressed. And yes, you're right. I'm sure it's not universal. I think there are cultures that celebrate it a lot more, but I feel like it goes hand in hand so often with religion. It's like it's the one way to control creativity, and because that is like the chaotic feminine brings creativity. It brings that's the feminine in you is that creative, like, so again, you have the feminine and masculine essence, and it's that chaotic creativity, beauty that you bring as well. And if we're taught that is something that is so dangerous, look around. It's like when you have religion that wants to control and keep people from being creative, it often does translate into the arts and into, all of that becomes dangerous as well, because that's the feminine part of society.
Okay, that's interesting.
So it's not gender.
Okay, so I wasn't thinking in those terms, but it's sort of clicking now. So if we think about religions, whatever they may be, wrong iterations on the Christian religion or false religions, what we would consider false religions, and people would disagree with us on which religions are false, maybe which aren't, which that's totally fine. But the putting the cloak or a wet blanket, if you will, on females can sort of be the Trojan horse for doing the same with feminism, which includes creativity and free thinking and all of these other things, which if you let that run too rampantly can damage your religion.
Because it's very hard to control. It's
Dang.
yeah.
So this topic is,
and the feminine needs the masculine. We need order. We need order. We do need that. Like that's why the blend is the polarity is very important. But to totally nix the feminine and femininity,
right,
and have only then you've got totalitarianism.
Right.
Then it's all order. Then it's that marching to the it's that goose step. It's only that, and that's what you end up with.
That's interesting. Okay, let me ask you this. This was the one thing I wasn't clear on. And I mean, I'm always sort of just naturally like skeptical about new information and new trends and those types of things.
Probably why we could talk for a long time, because I'm curious and let it in and then go, oh, maybe not.
Well, I'm curious too, and I let it in, but I always like to okay, if I was someone who disagreed with this, how would I poke holes in it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Super healthy.
Yeah. And so one of the questions that I had is, let's take passion, for example, because I saw a list that had a list of masculine traits, a list of feminine traits, and passion was on the feminine side.
Okay.
You could use controlling as another example. That was on the masculine side. But let's go with passion, for example. That was on the feminine side. So why are we calling it feminine? I assume because more of a larger percentage of females tend to have this particular trait, whatever it may be, whereby we're going to call it a feminine trait, whereas maybe more males are controlling, right? So statistically, more males are controlling, so we're going to call controlling a masculine trait. So I sort of get that, and yet also, who says passion is masculine or feminine? Can't passion just be passion? Because I'm passionate. Does that mean I'm a little feminine? Like, well, I was like, that was my pushback. Who says passion is either masculine or feminine? Can it just be passion?
For sure. I could think it can just be passion, but on the discussion on feminine, masculine, if we're going to be like defining things that are more feminine, and again, don't go gender, because for instance, Patrick and I have recently realized one of the reasons we've had a lot of polarity in our for forever, we've always had polarity, was I lived most of my life, probably majority in my masculine, and he lived a lot of his life in his feminine, and he was very passionate. So yes, a male can have passion. That's just them tapping into the feminine essence that they have the ability to tap into.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make them feminine.
Right.
It doesn't make them, again, like, because of the culture that we're in, and especially with some of the phobics that we have around some of that, gender neutral stuff. It's like, oh my word, if I want to identify as a woman, then I can't have any masculine traits. Or if I'm a man, I think it goes probably a little more like, if I want to be a man and I want to identify as a male, then I can't have any feminine traits. No, you have feminine traits about you. You probably live more out of your masculine energy for the majority of your life, but you absolutely, and in a healthy way, would tap into these feminine traits, like passion. And honestly, Patrick was better at some of those feminine traits than I was, because he had tapped into that in a way. And so for us, we're both kind of trying to tap into the opposite, and it's like this uncomfortable dance sometimes. It's like, he's learning how to lean into his masculine energy more, and I'm learning to lean into my feminine energy more.
Yeah,
and
interesting.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
It's and it's, again, I'm probably butchering it totally, and I've a lot to learn on it, and I'm excited about it. But it's been helpful.
Yeah. So another way to think about it is femininity, which I understand you're saying it's not gender related, but also it's called feminine, which has to stem from female. You know what I mean? And it's called masculine, which has to stem from male. So I understand it's not saying males are controlling and women never are or whatever. It's not gender.
But a male may be more familiar with some of those traits.
That's right.
Or may be able to tap into them more than what a female.
So another way, maybe a more accurate way is, and I understand this doesn't work with like all infographics, but like you have feminine here, and instead of just putting passion, another way to think about it, or maybe a more accurate way to think about it would be tends to be more passionate more of the time.
Right.
Right. And then it doesn't mean,
or maybe able to tap
passionate,
into passion to get things done in a way that a male would use control to get things done.
Right. Yes.
Or structure to get things done, or order to get things done. And a woman uses her passion to get things done.
Yep.
And taps into that to accomplish something.
Yep.
A male may tap into structure and order.
Yes.
To accomplish something.
Makes sense. I heard something a few years ago that kind of stuck with me, which is if you kind of consider a center point and then sort of a line going out each side, and let's just say to the right you have feminine traits, and to the left you have masculine traits. And when you think about think about you, for example, where you would fall on the feminine side, with your traits, if you could kind of scale it like that, like the most feminine woman you've ever seen or the most masculine woman you've ever seen. Like everyone falls on that scale somewhere. And the idea was, I sort of think this came from Tim Ferriss, but it was years ago and now I kind of forget. Although the more I think about it, the more I'm pretty sure it did come from Tim Ferriss, which is the point that relationships generally work best when you are equidistant from the center.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember him talking about that as well.
Yeah. So a woman who is like the most feminine woman might pair best with a man who's like the most masculine man. And I feel like you see this sometimes, maybe particularly in the South. Like I've seen a few couples where like the lady is so preppy and so, which I guess the more I talk, the more I'm going to like, people are going to disagree with me because as I start to describe what I think of as feminine might not actually be, but like, you're like, wow, how does someone like that put together and that preppy and that classy, like be with that hunter dude? But it sort of seems to work. But then if you have like, so anyhow, the point was relationships kind of work the best when you're kind of equidistant from center, wherever you are on the scale. There's no right and wrong place on the scale, but wherever you happen to be, the person probably that you like being around in a relationship is, relatively speaking, the same distance from center on the other side. And
that would be a very fascinating kind of survey study to take because, I mean, just thinking about it, you're right. It would seem that way. And like, for instance, going back to CrossFit, that's me super tapping into my masculine. Like that's not a very feminine workout at all. Yoga would be much more feminine.
That makes sense.
Much more fluid, much more, you think of like moving the hips and it's just much more fluid. But it works for me.
Yeah.
Like that is where I get to tap into that and I get to experience that and it works for me. It is rigid, it's ordered, it's structured, it's very, it's just very masculine.
What are you learning from this masculine, feminine discussion that is affecting your everyday, if anything?
It's definitely affecting the way Patrick and I relate to each other, like the way that I can bring almost anything, like talk about or think about. Actually, it does affect the way that I think as well. I allow myself more freedom to be chaotic in my thoughts and not feel shame around that. Like more, not have to have it all figured out. I can be more curious and also more open with my desires. Like I really feel like doing this right now. And I really feel, and again, that doesn't mean that I just let it go unbridled and I get to do everything I feel, but it lets me articulate that more. Like it's okay. Like I'm tapping into my feminine and it gives him the opportunity then to stand up and go, well, and he doesn't use this terminology, but pretty much like as the masculine, bringing order into some of that chaos, this is what I would see serve you best.
Yeah.
But that was something that was terrifying for me because I had really a lot of the examples that I'd seen in the women were like women that just put their heads down and just got shit done. Like, and so it was like, well, what if I don't like, what if I feel like doing this or this? And that's not doing laundry Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Right.
Or like, and again, like, it's not wrong to do that. That's
Right.
great. That's order. But, and I may have to pendulum swing a little bit to come back to the center. And I'm okay with that. But in my everyday life, it does give me the freedom to go, just tap in. Like, I wake up this morning and, well, okay, like, let yourself be the chaotic feminine, not female, but feminine. Just let yourself be that and articulate it, and then maybe sort from there and see what it is that would serve you well.
Yes.
And then in parenting, it's been fascinating because even in that, like, I would have typically been nervous about parenting more out of my feminine. I would have felt like it was like, there's not enough time. I'd have to get it figured out. I have to do things, I can't say I don't know, or I can't say change my mind, or I have to be more structured and ordered. And so in some of that, it's allowing the children even to, we're just kind of chaotic together. And chaotic is not the best way to explain it, because that just seems like, well, the house would be upside down in 2 days. It's
Sure.
not, it's still like,
Free-spirited.
Free-spirited,
Yep.
or go with the flow,
Right.
or not as like intense and stressed,
Yep.
or is how it's playing out in my life. I
Yep.
feel like more.
Interesting. What would you say then to modesty? Because I know you still believe in modesty. So whereas we're not saying you have to wear sandbags and everything and like cloak yourself entirely, and if you don't, you're immodest, and then you're going to cause immoral thoughts or behavior. So how do you think about modesty?
Well, I have tried to take apart the responsibility that we've put on women for what somebody else thinks about them. I have tried to kind of deconstruct that, because I feel like that it really, I mean, we've made it such a big issue that I feel like men kind of give themselves liberty to think what they want if they judge somebody in dressing less than modest, whatever they feel like is modest, because we've made it such a big deal. I feel like men have kind of become weak in that area in some ways. But so I've tried to kind of deconstruct from that, where it's like, I'm not going to think about what I'm wearing as responsible for other people's thoughts.
Okay.
And that can sound like a slippery slope. I understand that. And I'm being like, that's a vulnerable thing to say. But it does allow you then to go, why is it that I'm wearing what I'm wearing? I'm going to stop thinking about that I'm wearing it to try to protect people from me or try to keep somebody from sinning. Okay, so that's that. Why is it that I wear what I wear? And what is it that I'm bringing or presenting? Because what I wear is telling you a lot about what I care about. And that's really what it should be about, right? That's what I should be bringing. And there may be days that somebody looks and goes, whoa, she's really like in a place today based on what she's wearing. That's fine. But I think it's time that we stop saying that what a woman wears. Because again, as Linda, back to the book Pure, Linda K. Klein, she said she soon realized as a teenager when we had fundraiser car washes, right? It was totally okay for the guys after a half hour to be stripping off their shirts and their chests out, sprayed down, all wet. And, and the women, if you thought things, that was fine. But as soon as somebody sprayed you and you had a t-shirt on and things were exposed, you felt shame and had to go change. There's a problem there.
Yeah, there is a problem.
There's a problem there. And again, we've been conditioned to think that, so that men now kind of feel like, well, I can't help myself. And so if that happens, like it's on her. No, it's not on her. We have to like take that apart. So like with my girls, it's, again, we're kind of fleshing this out right now. I mean, I've got Bridget's preteen, but she could be a teenager. She's almost as tall as I am. And she's going through, puberty and all of those changes. And Portia's almost 18. And so we talk about it. And I think we are probably we have less roles around clothing, and just allow them to show us by what they're choosing to wear, what's going on.
Yep.
And then go from there.
Yeah. I like that. That's a really good way of looking at it because you're getting to the heart of the matter. You know, even with you focusing less on how you're going to dress based on what other people are going to think and more on why you want to wear this to begin with.
Right.
And if you find yourself, or I find myself, oh, I want to wear this because I want this kind of attention. I want this sort of an interaction. I want this. And those are not healthy attentions or interactions. Well, then don't dress like that for those reasons.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Or maybe for validation. Maybe it's
Right,
that you're putting it on,
exactly.
but it gives you a better picture of that than it does if you're just going like, I have to wear this
Yes.
because of this, because I've been told this about it.
Yep.
And I don't know personally what the line is on modesty, honestly. Like, what is modest? But I definitely don't think modest is hottest. Like, I think I think that term is just like it. Yeah. Again, it's like it was a way to kind of judge people because it was
Right.
like, that's, I mean, for my.
Oh, you mean modest is hottest? Like, yeah,
It
I
was
see
a
what
way
you
of
mean.
going like, okay,
Yeah,
so
like not looking culturally current is somehow the hottest you can dress.
right. Like, well, you could actually use that and tagline it on anything, but it was like
Sure.
a thing that you would say. But honestly, like Patrick's grandma would say something is immodest very differently than I would. So again, it's not,
Exactly.
it's very hard to define.
And you can travel into different states, and people are going to have different opinions on modesty. And then when you start traveling into different countries,
Religions, different cultures, different,
exactly. Then it gets really, really hard to really all agree on what's modest and what's immodest.
Right.
So, I mean, but that's the gospel, right? I mean, that's the scripture. It
Yeah.
always cuts to the heart of the matter.
Yeah.
You know, you guys had a law that it was wrong to kill people. Well, I'm telling you, it's wrong to think about killing them.
Right.
I mean, you know how much heart work you got to do now?
Yeah.
You know, you guys said it was wrong to like fornicate, but I'm saying it's wrong to think about that.
Right.
I mean, that really just slices to the heart of the matter. And that is why we need Christ, because we can't all like, we can like white knuckle it a lot with our actions, but you can't white knuckle it with your heart and your mind.
Yeah.
Like that's where you need the cleansing power of the blood of Christ.
We don't know what the hell we're up to most of the time. Like I myself don't know. And so we do need Christ. We need that spirit to like be that guide for us.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot more grace in that way, because if that is how I live and I rub shoulders with somebody who feels differently, am I going to trust God in them?
Right.
And allow that he is doing his work.
Yes.
No matter where they're at on the journey, no matter if they believe it's okay, back to the modesty issue, whether they believe it's okay to walk around downtown Franklin in a skimpy bikini, or if they believe that it's their calling to be completely covered up in a burqa and like, but to go, all right, God has them on a journey.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to trust God in them.
Yeah.
He's speaking to me. I'm presenting and showing up the way I know best.
Yes.
And
we make bad Holy Spirits.
yeah,
We
we
all
really
make
do.
bad Holy Spirits.